Hello, I'm Sugar. This is a normal and heroic boss guide for Kel'Thuzad and Sanctum of Domination. This is a 3-phase fight that repeats phases 1 and 2 3 times. The goal is to bring KT to 0 HP in phase 1 to trigger phase 2, where the raid splits into groups, one entering the phylactery to fight a remnant of KT's soul, bringing the soul to 60% HP, then 20% HP, and 0 will trigger phase 1 again. The other group will stay upstairs and deal with adds. Hero should be used in phase 3. The raid should position themselves loosely around the room and be ready to move to adds or stack for mechanics. Tanks will have a lot to do in phase 1 because of soul fracture. This mechanic splits the tank's soul into 3, manifesting as adds around the room. The DPS should switch to these adds and interrupt their piercing wail. Once down, the tank will need to run over the pieces in order to reclaim their soul and remove soul exhaustion. Players marked with Oblivion's Echo can drop their silencing circles onto these adds to help prevent their casts. This helps minimize the damage the raid takes and how many interrupts are needed. Best practice is to position the Echo so the add is on the very edge, that way melee can still DPS if needed. Shortly after the Echoes, the Frostbound Devoted are summoned. Players who are fixated should kite them, the rest of the raid should use CCs on them, and nuke them down. If they catch their target, they explode, dealing damage to anyone within 10 yards. The raid will need to stack up on the player with Frost Blast. This is an ice meteor that, on impact, splits its overall damage amongst those stacked and roots them in place with frozen binds. Mass Dispel and other abilities that remove movement impairing effects are helpful here. 3 players will be marked with Glacial Wrath that spawns a spike at their location. These spikes lose HP over time and need to be DPS down in a staggered fashion to avoid taking extra damage from frozen destruction. The raid should position the spikes in a way that 2 of them can easily be DPS down, while the third expires on its own. Any players or adds that have died will be resurrected during Dark Evocation. The adds can get a little overwhelming at this point, so make sure there are traps and other forms of CC out to help slow them down. Any teammates that are resurrected will also need to be DPS down. At 100 energy, KT will cast Howling Blizzard, filling the room with ice zones that expand. Find the safe area and the gaps between them. That's all for phase 1 mechanics. Let's move on to phase 2. In this phase, the raid should be split into 2 teams, the phylactery team containing half your DPS and at least 1 healer, and an upstairs team that stays in the current area and deals with the adds. For the phylactery team, go to KT's green area and use your extra action button to enter. A remnant of KT will be waiting with the following abilities. Sinister Miasma is a stacking debuff that deals increasing damage the longer the phase goes on. Shadow Fissures are swirly circles that need to be dodged. Freezing Blast is a frontal ice ability that needs to be dodged. In Heroic, when the remnant is below 33% HP, Glacial Winds are added that root anyone they touch. When the remnant reaches 60, 20, and 0% HP, the team needs to use their extra action button to return upstairs before the Undying Wrath cast finishes. Soul Marked will prevent re-entry to the phylactery on Heroic. The team upstairs will be dealing with unstoppable abominations that have a frontal called Demolish that needs to be dodged. Soul Reavers who cast Banshee's Cry, and in Heroic, if this isn't interrupted, it will put a stacking damage taken debuff on the raid. In Heroic, Undying will revive any adds that are defeated after 10 seconds if the phylactery is still open, so the raid will need to time their deaths around the time just before it closes. If any of these revived adds are up after the phylactery closes, they are buffed with Necrotic Empowerment, giving them 25% increased damage and making them immune to all forms of CC. Each time KT is revived by the phylactery, Necrotic Surge buffs his damage done by 5%, and the number of Glacial Wraths and Oblivion's Echoes cast at the raid is increased. Now on to phase 3, where Sinister Miasma is applied to the whole raid in Heroic, stacking just like it does in the phylactery. Deep Freeze will form ice patches on the ground that last the entire phase. The goal is to defeat KT before the raid runs out of room to stand. Onslaught of the Damned will be reviving any ads and slain players. The raid will also have to still stack up for Frostblast. That's all for this boss. I don't have any raid plans for this because there are so many mechanics going on. Good luck on this boss fight. Okay, bye.